Jambo, mambo, habari gani? Karibuni sana katika lesson ya leo, and in today's lesson we're going to be looking at Swahili sentences. Swahili sentences. How do we construct them in Kiswahili? So, what are our learning outcomes in this session? By the end of this session, you should be able to learn the following. Number one, learn the basic structures of how to construct Swahili sentences. So, what are those structures? Learn what are the pronouns in Kiswahili. That is, me, you, he or she, they. Those are the pronouns. Subject prefixes. I am, you are, he or she is. Tense. When is the action happening? Now. Did it happen in the past? Has it just happened? Will it happen? Those are the tenses. So let's look at, first of all, what are the Swahili sentences essentials for constructing sentences kwa Swahili. Number one, we'll need to have the people. These are the subject prefixes kwa Swahili. And the subject prefixes that you're going to be looking at, you'll be looking at the words like I am, you are, he or she is, we are, you plural are, they are. So that's very important. So for you to construct a sentence in Kiswahili that is sense-making, you have to have the subject prefixes beginning your sentence. Second thing, we need to look at the tenses. Present tense, now. Present perfect, has or have. So in English, when your sentence has a has or a have, we use the present perfect tense. The past and the future, that is the second part that comes in the sentence. And the last part that will go in your basic sentences are the verbs. For example, we're going to have verbs like kula, to eat, kusafiri, to travel. So those are the three, first of all, essential things that you need to construct basic sentences in Kiswahili. You need to have your subject prefix, you need to have your tense, and you need to have your verb. Once you combine the three together, you have the first part of the sentence. Then the other bits that you're going to be adding to your sentences are the nouns. And in terms of nouns, you'll be having things like tea. Do you remember the word tea in Kiswahili? Chai. Dog. How do you say dog in Kiswahili? Mbwa. So those are other things that are going to come into our sentences, but as additions. But for now, the main things that you need to understand are the subject prefix, tense, verbs, and then nouns. Karibuni sana. Let's have a look at what are these Swahili pronouns and the subject prefixes. And here I've labeled it positives because we can have the same equivalent of the subject prefixes but on the negative. But for today's lesson, we're going to concentrate on the subject prefixes on the positive. But for now, let's have a look at the pronoun. How do you come across and how do you see the following words? Me, I, kwa Kiswahili, mimi, mimi. Can you point to yourself and say mimi? If you can remember in lesson 1, I said, Jambo, mimi ni Sam. Me, mimi, me, mimi. But when you're constructing a sentence, we will not use our pronouns. We will use our subject prefixes. And these subject prefixes are like I am, you are, he or she. So the equivalent of I am in Kiswahili is ni. The reason that I'm not putting the English here is that I want us to start learning them in Kiswahili. Ni, I am, ni. Can you pronounce that? Your turn. Ni. Sante. Then we have you as the pronoun. You. Can you point at someone and say, wewe? Asante sana. Wewe. Thank you very much. Asante sana. Wewe means you in Kiswahili. And in terms of constructing a sentence, when you're saying you are, you're going to say u. For example, you'll be hearing words like unapenda, you like, you, Then the next part which we have to learn is a he or a she. What is a he or a she? In Kiswahili is yeye. So you might be, what? Do you say he or a she? Do you combine the sexes together? Hapana. It's just that we know how to say he or a she in Kiswahili when you're pointing at a person. It's yeye. Can you point at someone else far away? Say yeye. Your turn. Yeye. Sante sana. But when you're constructing a sentence and you're saying he or she is going, we're going to use our prefix a. Can you pronounce that? A. Your turn. A, for example, anaenda, he or she is going. We'll be doing these examples, so don't worry about it. We'll be doing them together. So the first three are the basic ones that you must learn, the first, second, and the third. But because I knew you're a good student and you can handle more, I went for us, or we in Kiswahili. Us, we. And it is sisi. Can you pronounce that? Again, tena. Sisi. Sisi. Us. Sisi. What about we are? You're going to say to. To. We are. We are going to blah, 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 blah. So that's very important to learn that. Then you're going to have a look at the fifth person, which is the you plural. Remember the you here was you singular, and this is the you plural. The you plural in Kiswahili, it is, can you give it a go? It is nyinyi. Some of my students always say, you have to make sure that your face becomes a bit rough. Nyinyi. Nyi. 2 syllables there. Nyinyi. When you point at people and say, all of you plural, nyinyi. But when you're saying you plural are doing something, you're going to use the subject prefix naenda, nafanya, na, is the you plural subject prefix. And the last prefix that you're going to have a look at is the they. Them, they. Wow. I let my students try and learn this as, wow, I've seen so many people, wow, they, wow. And then the subject prefix for it is wa. Wow. So these are very important subject prefixes that we have learned together with the pronouns. Sometimes there is a question and there is an argument. Why do we have to learn the pronouns as well as learn the subject prefixes? The most important thing to learn is that the reason that we are introducing the pronouns at this stage is that if you wanted to give a clarification, who did something? Me. You will not use ni. You will use me, the pronoun. If it was you, you're going to say wewe. So that's why we're having to learn the pronouns and the subject prefixes together. So mimi ni. Can you go for that? Mimi ni. You. Wewe u. Can you say that? Wewe u. He or she. Yeye a. Can you say that? Yeye a. Us. Sisi tu. Your turn. Very good. You plural. Nyinyi Your turn. They, them. Wa. Your turn. Asante sana. Thank you very much. So those are our subject prefixes as well as our pronouns or pronouns and subject prefixes across all the different people that we can have, all the pronouns that we have in English. So we're going to be using this in our sentences. And as we continue, you're going to notice something very important, that all the subject prefixes that I've given here, I've put a hyphen, meaning that they start the sentence. The subject prefixes start the sentence with a hyphen, subject prefix hyphen, subject prefix hyphen. They start the sentence. In our next part, we are going to look at Swahili tenses. Again, positives, because in our second block, which is beginners level 2, we're going to be looking at the negatives. But for now, we're looking at the positives. Swahili tenses on the positives, very important. Here we're going to start with our first tense, the present tense. The present tense is now. Anytime the action is happening now, or it is continuing to happen now, we use the present tense na. Can you pronounce that? Your turn. Na. Asante. Thank you. Then we have the present perfect tense. Some of my students always say, what is this present perfect tense? What is the difference between the present and the present perfect tense? The simplest answer to that is anytime that your English sentence has a has or a have, she has come, they have gone, you're going to use the mere tense. So note that anytime that your English sentence has a has or a have, or the action has just happened a few minutes ago, a few moments ago, has, have, you use the mere tense. Then we have the past tense, an action happened long time ago. Which tense do we use? Li. Can you pronounce that? Your turn. Li. And then we have the last tense that I'm going to be introducing for this block, which is the future tense. And the future tense is ta. Can you pronounce that? Ta. Sante sana. So we have, I always tell my students, this is how I want you to learn the tenses in Kiswahili. Namelita. Na, present tense. Me, present perfect tense. Li, past tense. Ta, future tense. Namelita. Namelita. Very important. So those are our Swahili tenses, and they come in between the subject prefix and the verb. So remember the previously I've introduced the subject prefix and we saw them with one hyphen coming after. Now we have two hyphens here and here, here and here, meaning that the tenses come in the middle. And then the next part that you're going to learn, which completes our good sentences that we're going to be constructing, is our verbs. And we did some examples of verbs. Do you remember? In the previous, if you haven't watched that video, watch that video before you come here so that you can understand the rules and what we learned about verbs and the different types or categories of verbs. But can you remind me this verb? Kuchoka, to be tired. What about this verb? I know you know it. Do you remember it? Can you say it? Your turn. Kupenda. Asante sana. Thank you very much. To do laundry. How do we say that kwa Kiswahili? Kufua. Asante. Thank you. What about to go? I know you remember that. Can you remind me? To go. Kuenda. Asante. What about to speak? Kuongea. Asante sana. To speak. Kuongea. What about to run? Kukimbia. Your turn. Kukimbia. What about come? How do you say come? Kuja. It's a monosyllabic verb, short verb. Come. Kuja. The last verb that we did was cook. Can you remember? Kupika. So those are some of the verbs that we have in Kiswahili. So now that one completes the third part or the third section of sentence construction that comes after the tense, and also it comes after the subject prefix. But let's look at something very important. And so what's the structure for constructing sentences in Kiswahili? So, well, let's look at the structure of constructing sense-making sentences in Kiswahili. So the first thing that we need, and we're going to use, is our modal verb, which is enda. Already I have omitted the infinitive ku, so I've been left with the verb on its imperative. So let's look at what we will need. We'll need the subject prefix, we will need the tense, and we will need the verb. For example, if we wanted to say a simple sentence, I am going, what are we going to do? The first thing we have to look at the subject prefix, I in Kiswahili, which is ni. I is ni. Then the tense, when is it happening? The action is happening right now. I am going. So it's on the present tense. We're going to put your tense there, which is the na. Then we've got our verb, which is go, enda. So now we have a full complete sentence. I want you to read it for me. Your turn, go. Ninaenda. Asante sana. And that's how you read it, as one word. Ninaenda. Perfect. What if you wanted to construct a sentence such as, I am going home? What are we going to do? We're just going to look at the noun home, which we're going to add at the end. But before that, let's look. We start with the subject prefix, ni. You add your tense, na. You add your verb, enda, which is go. And then you add your noun, nyumbani, which means home. So the sentence reads as follows. Ninaenda nyumbani. Your turn. Read. Asante, ninaenda nyumbani. I am going home. Thank you very much. So in the next lesson, we're going to be looking at the present tense, na. At the present tense, na. This will help us construct, and we do a lot of practice across different subject prefixes, and you will use one modal verb and construct interesting sense-making sentences in Kiswahili. Thank you. Asanteni sana. Thank you very much for being very good students and learning and putting a lot of effort in learning how to construct sense-making sentences kwa Kiswahili. Until I see you in the next lesson where we'll be learning about the na. Kwaherini. Goodbye. Asante.